how do I actually feel after 2 hours straight of sitting at a computer and squinting at size 10 font?
I really there was no sense of boundaries. It was always the sense that I could be working, that I should be working, and there were always things to do. And I think that's something that happens especially in the nonprofit sector.
An endless to-do list when you're an activist.
So setting limits is a key piece of the health of any living system. And we find that we can push some limits to their edge every so often, but we can't live and maintain health if we push the system to its extremes all the time.
So in the last 5 years, my attachment to my computer has been pretty intense, and to the point that other people, when I was in grad school, would even comment about it, like how I always had it, and I always had it on, and I was always working, when I didn't even realize it. So I was completely unaware, and am still completely unaware of how easily I get sucked into that world.
I would actually just lie down on the floor and literally be like feet away from electric cables. I just like such electromagnetic energy, but I will choose that because I'm a little exhausted. And so like the thought of actually going up to this other space seems like kind of unimaginable. And if I were to take, 20 steps down, I would walk out and be, in nature. That's a hard choice for me sometimes.
You have the whole phenomenon and trend of people becoming more and more sort of encapsulated in these worlds. They're also just complete kind of like black holes.
Well, I'll work for 15 minutes or half an hour, and I wear a wrist brace on my right wrist so that I don't get repetitive stress injury. And I'll take a break every 15 or 20 minutes and go have a drink or have a snack if I'm hungry or thirsty, and I'll go outside and I go outside and jump rope for a few minutes or run up and down and do high kicks or stretch and that kind of thing. I don't always manage to keep that habit.
That's another piece that makes it hard to draw boundaries because it feels so safe and so comfortable and so secure to be sitting there, interacting with a computer rather than a plant or a person or
addictive qualities of the computer, and the fact that they seem clean, safe, tidy, the reality behind the scenes where we're somewhat divorced from, there's a trail of waste that's like a mile high. Went to the hardware store the other day and I just struck up a chat with one of the guys working there, and haven't gotten into that email thing yet. And I thought to myself, wow, how I envied him. I said, if you don't have to, I wouldn't mess around with it if I were you.
For my whole life, I've been struggling with boundaries and when not to push myself too hard, how to be kind to myself and take care of myself and compassionate, not work too hard. And so when you have those two things coming together, someone who's already kind of predisposed to push their boundaries, and this sort of mind-sucking black hole, hasn't been the greatest combination for me.
Recognizing what are our limits. So that process of listening to ourselves is a key piece.
And what was even more kind of dark and striking for me and ironic was that I was working with all these people all over the world that were doing such incredible local grassroots hands-on work with other people, building community on the ground through relationship, right? And the work that we're doing was really about relationship and about building those connections between people. The only way that we had to do it was through the interface of a machine. About how much waste is generated for every click of the computer,
Right. And every click, you're reminding me, a certain amount of carbon burned and a certain amount of toxins dumped into the water and a certain amount of slave labor to create the keyboard I'm typing on,
It's not just about the environmental impacts or, reducing the actual physical waste that we create, but it's also what's the waste in our energy, and I just really spend a lot of time thinking about that in terms of the amount of time that I spend on a computer or the amount of time or effort that I put into something for I'm not sure what the result is.
When you're on the computer and you're doing all these work, this quote work, you don't necessarily see the results. So there's not a trust in your system that you're actually doing the work that that you intend to do when you sit down at the computer. There's not that physical, visceral feedback of I'm actually getting something done here. It takes an enormous amount of trust, which I don't think we've developed yet with this technology.
A lot of times I feel like I'm just sort of like sending things into the virtual black hole, and really having no sense of like, a feeling of accomplishment, or like you're saying, that visceral sense. Like if you say, today I'm going to plant my garden, and then it's either you did it or you didn't do it. Whereas with this stuff, it's like I feel like I'm tricking myself a little bit by checking something like that's very hard to say when it ends or when it's completed or when you've done it off my list,
Going deeper into our bodies is going to be crucial to human beings being able to survive on this beautiful earth for the long haul. And so when I see us, and particularly us meaning embodied artists, becoming so reliant in a very short period of time, obviously, upon computers and the web, and getting undeniable benefits from it. But it makes me wonder about, are we possibly leaning too much on this crutch, or kind of barking up the wrong tree? That all the things that are in a computer and in a cell phone are already in our bodies. So why can't we just get rid of that, the hardware, and just use the software? Our bodies being software.
I truly feel that I can experience the embodiment as a shamanistic practice, or like as an indigenous physical practice, or that more accessible is actually creating new forms, new indigenous forms, like new creations, new and innovative forms as we go through. And I think that that's where I get really excited